Yeah, my name's Abby Brunswick and I'm the director of Project 17, which is a charity working to reduce destitution among migrant families who have no access to mainstream benefits because of immigration problems. I think there are many examples of how these policies, these hostile environment policies, undo communities in which migrants live. Our clients very often end up relying really heavily on community support, maybe unable to rent properties, unable to work. They are very often reliant on friends and families for support, moving between people, relying so heavily on support networks that are eventually exhausted. Eventually we see those community ties being broken down. Churches, friends, families say, well, we can't support you any longer. We've been basically carrying you and your family for years. We can't do that anymore. And we see the breakdown of relationships there, people becoming excluded from those communities, losing their friends. There's also a lot of shame involved. People don't necessarily want to disclose the fact that they have immigration problems, that they're going through this extreme poverty. So we see people hiding that from friends, family, religious institutions, from schools, trying to, I suppose, save some face by keeping those things very private. But of course that only really serves to make the situation worse, really.
My name is Dr. Rachel Humphreys. I'm a lecturer in sociology at the University of Birmingham. More recently, of course, we have Theresa May's explicit policy of the hostile environment to make life unlivable, really, for irregular migrants. But that policy really meant just driving down numbers, no matter what the cost, which of course has seeped into everyone's everyday life. So within that context of the hostile environment, my work with migrant children and families has meant that it's emerged in many different ways. So, for example, with Romanian Roma, they're being deported from maternity wards when they go and have babies. They're also kind of not allowed to have bank accounts, or their bank accounts are checked and closed. Relationships with landlords are very difficult because they're racialised as being Roma and untrustworthy and perhaps not having the correct immigration papers, and therefore they end up living in slum-like conditions. And then also 2 years ago, Romanian Roma were being deported from the streets in London because they were homeless. That practice has since stopped because it was deemed illegal by the European Court of Human Rights. I see a number of areas where the hostile environment policies are really promoting a very unwelcoming and are sort of destroying communities in many ways. And I think if we think about how we experience belonging or how we experience home and feeling safe, it is these everyday interactions with the GP, with teachers in schools, with being able to drive around, with being able to go to the hospital. And it's these areas that have become internal borders now within the hostile environment. So people are constantly audited. They have to provide papers at all times. And of course, these things are inherently racialized because people who don't look like they might belong are called out more often to prove that they are able to access these services. And so there is this side of it that of course creates a sense of anxiety and fear. But then on the other side, for the people, the frontline services who have to ask people for their papers, they also are encountering this duty to become border cards in their everyday life. I mean, I experience it as a university lecturer, having to check up on students' immigration papers. It creates a different kind of mentality. So it operates on both sides. And I think this is what's really insidious about the hostile environment. It's this citizen-on-citizen immigration checks and this privatization of the border that becomes deterritorialized and emerges at all points within our everyday lives.